It's the first weekend of May.
The first, but it wasn't 2 years ago.
I know, that was the only exception we made. Okay. So I would like to, I'm just going to do it this way. I'm going to mess up your position. I'd like to announce Fran Faraz. She will be giving a talk today, and the title of the talk is Artificial Intelligence and in the Age of Technology and Artificial Intelligence. And as it said, that was exactly what I was going to say, that she's from the Golden West College Peace Studies program. And Fran has been, and her husband have been associated with the foundation for a long time. Last year, she participated also in the conference we organized. It was also related to the mirror of relationship. I'm really happy that she is speaking today on this topic, and hope we'll have a good time.
Thank you.
Good. Sorry, I hope.
No, I don't think so. I think it would be great. Good afternoon. Hi. How are you doing? Yeah, awesome. You just attended one session in the morning. How was that? Good. Yeah. I was there, and I was like, I think Michael basically covered everything. I think I can just go home. Because it was exactly what, the things I was, I'm planning to talk about, and somewhat from the perspective of students and the young generation, actually. Like, they are the one who are experiencing it. They're the one they're experiencing everything that Michael was talking about. So as told you, my name is Fran Faraz, and I'm the director of Peace Studies program at Golden West College. It is really an honor and pleasure for me to be here. It took me, for many years, I have been looking or watching Krishnamurti's, the dialogue, and back then it was like those big tapes, and kind of like going back and and taking notes and go. Oh no, I think I got it. No, I didn't get it. Like go back a little bit more, and never throughout those times I thought that I would actually. Start actually myself talking about all of that, but it has been a big part of my life, and for many years we did the dialogues in our house like every other Sunday, and some of you are here. We experienced those dialogues, and it immensely made a difference in my life and the direction that I'm taking. So let's make sure that this is working, because it is not advancing. Yes, there we go. Yeah, it's good now. Great. So the title that we chose was Freedom from the Conditioning in the Age of Technology and Artificial Intelligence. And I don't know how it is here in Ojai, but the reason I kind of went into it in today's environment, our society, we are really pulled. The polarization and our identities are very much has been impacted by technology and information technology. And so I thought when Yup called me and said that talk about a dialogue, and I was like, okay, what subject I want to talk about? And one thing that is very present to me right now is the our identity and polarization that we are experiencing right now, and the dominant role we keep even going further and further. The use of technology, social media is actually advancing this separation narrative more and more. So I thought that it would be appropriate to talk about it, that human experience in the 21st century has defined by identity polarization, and ideological separation with the domination of dominant role that modern technology has come in play in our lives, social media, digital platforms, artificial intelligence. What challenges do we face, to quote Krishnamurti, to be unconditionally free? And I would like to ask you the question that you want to hold probably throughout this time is that, what are the blind spots that we have? I think, Krishnaji has explained a lot of things really well. And for us to actually wear all of that and actually get into action about a lot of that is that we have a blind spot. And, for us to get into that blind spot, to be able to utilize the teaching, perhaps, we have to be a lot more aware of our blind spots to allow the teachings to go and work on us. My personal experience, and why I got interested in the work of Krishnamurti is that about our social, cultural, climate, economic, political background has shaped us. And I was driven. I was really shaped by my culture, by my background. And throughout the years that I came to the United States as a transfer student, and I thought that I have to be driven. I have to be at the top of my game. I have to prove myself. So when I graduated, same thing. I have to be at the top of the game in terms of social structure of the society. I have to kind of prove that. And as I did that, and that conditioning went and worked on me, and I kind of very soon I forgot all my ideals as a student. And as I stepped into the corporate world, I started, all those conditioning became intensified and became really alive. And so living with that, for so long, I experienced firsthand, what does all that conditioning means, which our younger generation today, they are also dealing with all of that, all the expectations, all of that is premeditated for them, that you need to be this, by this age you have to be doing that, and this is the definition of success. And so that conditioning had a personal meaning to me. So when I graduated, my father, I went to Northeastern University in Boston. So my father got one book in the sidewalk sales, book sales, and he read it back to back. And he gave me that book and said, I think you should be reading this. And I picked it up, and that book was The First and Last Freedom. And I sort of got it, but the conditioning of the society was much, much, much heavier than what I was getting there. And I was like, yeah, this is nice, but, that but changes everything, changes completely our lives. So going back and, just kind of I continued on with my life, came to be maybe about 20 years after that. I felt like, yes, I have maybe accomplished a lot of things, but if you feel like there is a void in your heart and a hole in your heart and a void in your soul, and you're in the mornings, your showers are getting longer and longer, and you don't want to get out, so that you know that there is something wrong here. And so as I quit my job and kind of went back to find out what's really the purpose of my life. The very first book, it was completely serendipity, and I don't know how my hand got on that book again, which was The First and Last Freedom. I had no idea I had it. It just it was very magical for me to pick up that book and start reading it. And this time I knew, even if I'm not getting completely that, I'm gonna have to slow down and read it twice, 3 times. Just keep going into it and don't avoid. Because I knew that at that point, I knew if I'm saying that I don't know what this is my brain is getting a payoff for not looking into what it is that I have to distinguish at this point in my life. So that book became a major thing for me to to keep going back and experimenting that and questioning myself about it, about everything. As Krishnaji's, I kept reading, understanding that these are my conditioning, and there's no reality to it other than the one that the society and the culture has created for me. And I have lived it, and so this is kind of like no reality to that. The more and more I understood the superstitious I, that there is no such a thing as I. Like, it became even, as I started doing mindfulness and slow down, I felt like there is no center. When even I say I see, there is no center. How, the images and the light has hit my eyes and has gone in the back, and then my brain has identified the object and says, well, this is a chair, but there is no I that has seen it. Or when I say I hear, it's completely wrong. It's not accurate. There is no center that these vibration hits my ear and goes back in there and goes back to the back of my brain, and so on and so forth. And I identify the words and the sentences and everything else. So it's really not accurate that to say I see, I hear, I smell. There's no such center as that. That was very revealing to me, to feel like, okay, if this I is not accurate, and if this I that I is just a memory and experiences that says that, then what else is not true? What else is not accurate? And so those memory and experiences, and also understanding all the meaning that I associated with that, all the meaning or interpretations that I associate with that, all the things that I must be doing this or I should be doing this. These are all kind of like, meanings that I associate with them. None of that had any reality other than the one that I had created, or no reality to any of that other than the one that I said, this is the truth. And there was none of that. So that was very liberating for me, and I felt like, I have to immerse myself with all the readings, from Krishnaji's to keep getting it, and it was the hardest thing. It was the hardest thing because it felt like I have to kind of like, it's like a shirt, you take it inside, outside, and they have told you all the time that this outside is the correct, the right one, and then but the inside, and so you're gonna have to kind of like completely pull it off, and that's how it felt. And throughout that time, it was, all of that was very revealing, that how conditioning of culture, or the structure of the society has given me all, that kind of a reality. The more I read and investigated into that, the more I realized that this I that I have created has desires, and the desires of control. One, I wanted to control everything. I wanted to control my future. I wanted to control everything, and that was one of the things that kind of makes us, we write different narratives for life because we want to be in control, and there's nothing there, or the desire for security that all my life, I had kind of, I thought that I should be doing that because I need to be secure, and that was like the conditioning that in reality I had gotten from my culture or from my environment. And the more I stayed in the United States, these things became even more intensified. I don't think that when I was not living in the United States, I had this level of as secure as I was here, still feeling like, looking for more security. As the more financial freedom that I had, the more I thought I have to have more of that, and it was interesting to me that when I didn't have any of that financial freedom, how much I felt free, and then when I had it, how much actually I was in prison. So that kind of like, it was by questioning all of these things, my desire for control, security, or acknowledgement, like, I have to get this acknowledgement from the society that I have accomplished these things. It seemed like the value of a person itself by itself is not valuable until gets acknowledgement. So as I was looking at these cultural, political, economic background, all of that, that how it has played a role in my life, it was like very revealing. It was very liberating. Then this idea that I want to be this and that, just kind of, it started to disappear and loses its grip on me. So that was, the work was fundamental to my own personal growth. And when it happened that, I was like ready to go and create something, what appeared here was more of, I got invited to do a peace studies program, and my immediate kind of reaction was that I don't want to do that because, I had a certain kind of like explanation about what peace is. And the more I read the word of Krishnaji's, I realized that, well, it's all about interconnectedness, it's all about interrelatedness, and it's all about compassion and intelligence. And so if the narrative that we are working with, it would be the narrative of love and intelligence, and compassion and intelligence. So why not create programs with our young generation that can actually work with them from this perspective, other than the one, very different than the one that I was trained in, very different way of thinking that I was trained in to become. So I thought that would be actually a positive thing to do, and perhaps I should look into it and create that without any kind of a conditioning that I have about education, that it should be about knowledge. So how do you create a classroom that's not based on knowledge, but it's based on questioning, go to a space and to be safe and enough to question. And then knowledge should be coming as a result of that, not as a result of like us writing, presenting to people, to students, of what that would be. So with the students, we kind of created that let's put the earth at the fulcrum of all of this, and then we will figure out what kind of education do we want to create, which will train them to become more people that they go out there that create, that they have intelligence and compassion, both in their upbringing, and they would be able to work with the world with whatever they have in a different way. So some of the things that the students and the conditioning that we talk about it in the classroom, and I get to the technology part of it soon, is that we are conditioned. And we are conditioned, and as human beings, as they enter the classroom, they have entered with all the expectations, with all the things that they've been told. And even if they want to make a difference, still it's on the background of being good, not really understanding that what is it that they want to create. This morning, Mr. Mendes explained it really well to us, that there is that entity that that is going out there and create things. That entity there, that entity, so that state itself, that state of mind, that's the one that needs to be transformed. That's the one that would be. But even if we have like all the good intentions, we go out there and we're trying to create something. If that entity or that state is still the old state of mind, then we're going to go and create the same thing over and over again, even with the good intentions. So looking at everything that the students or our young generation is facing today, is kind of like it's all as a result of their conditioning. We have been conditioned to eat, to have like 7 billion slaughter every year and be okay with it, like conditioned to eat meat. And they're telling me, like, even if I want to change this habit, when I go out there to any restaurants, when I'm looking at the menu, it's all about meat, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so, that conditioning of mind that says that, yeah, eating meat is okay, and this is the way it is, and that's the normal way. Even when they find out, like, what's in the meat industry, still, people, they go around and they do the same thing. Like, being conditioned to our food, knowing that our food is actually the major contributor to climate change, to CO2s. Still, when that state hasn't changed, still it feels like, well, that's okay. I can go, it doesn't know anything other than it has already created. So it's still going there, although, we all shake up our head and says like, that's horrible. Having CO2s, and my food is contributing to that. Still, we go out there and do the same thing. If there's no inner transformation there, still, when we have the knowledge and information, still we go out there and do the same thing. We are still conditioned. When we are looking at we have like 65 million people displaced because of climate change, or there are other political or climate related. When they are dealing with that, and still people, they are kind of like closing their borders on people, still kind of like shaking our head and say, well, that's horrible. But it's still that state of being that has to experience compassion and intelligence is not there to solve a problem like that could be easily handled. So when people are displaced and their cultures are displaced, when the drought happens and displaces people, when people, the gap between the rich and poor is getting bigger and bigger, our young generation is looking at that and find themselves extremely unable to solve these problems, and it's impacting them a lot. But what's the conditioning there that doesn't allow them to see anything other than what's in the world right now? They see it, they don't like it, and they want to get away from it. But then again, all the conditioning there, it doesn't allow us to see anything other than what we see, and allow things to be status quo and emerge that way, and we are having difficulty dealing with it. So the question to hold is there, again, what's the blind side? What's the blind spot that we are experiencing that, and we are not able to, with all the technology or with all the solutions that might exist, still we are not able to resolve these issues. So what kind of a blind spot do we have that doesn't allow us for this to happen? As my good friend Nipon Mehta in one of his talks, he points this out, that once that stage or that inner transformation happens, perhaps we can go from consumers, that it's all, a lot of this is all as a result of our consumerism, that we are conditioned to be consumerist. Perhaps we can move from consumers to contributors. That's kind of like, that shift got to happen, but that shift doesn't happen until our inner state changes. Maybe we can become from isolation, which you can experience it. It's really heartbreaking to be with our young generation and feel how isolated they are. And so that isolation can transfer to become from isolation to community, and change from our transaction to trust. They say if you want to bring down a society, take the trust away from them. And as this generation doesn't have the trust in our political system, in religious system, in economic system, doesn't have any trust in our generation, who is leaving something really a mess for them. So they're looking at us why is that? And so they feel this isolation with technology, with their phones, with their social media and everything else, trying to reach out and make a connection, but that doesn't happen because the mind and heart over here is very isolated. It has been conditioned for isolation. Many times, if I ask them, would you like to do a group project? I often get an email later on, students saying that, well, I'm a kind of a loner. Can I do that on my own? I'm like, no. This is supposed to be a community project. This is supposed to be a student group project. And so how can we shift from isolation to a level of isolation to community, unless there is not an inner transformation? And here, the technology is further and further isolating them from each other and further impacts us to see what we want to see, delete people that we don't like, only people that we like, they would be on our connections. And more I see every time as they get to see who I am and what my tendencies are, only those things, they show up in my face. So on my Facebook or my social media or my connection. So more and more we see that, and that intensifies my biases. That would intensify, it's like an echo chamber. It intensifies what my thinking is. So if this generation is constantly being conditioned but what is being put in front of them and have no access to any other information or all the other information has been blocked away, so what can we expect other than the one that we have put in front of them? Same thing with our jobs. You know, the value that we have is the value according to our jobs. If our job, you know, we have just like, you know, if even with yourself, if you haven't noticed, just gonna go around the room and people, they very quickly ask you, well, what do you do? Just notice, like, if people, they are like not doing anything, you know, you kind of like, you know, their head kind of goes like that. You know, that it's just like, it seems like our values are very conditioned to have our jobs and you know, is related to our value. If we have, like, you know, this kind of, that kind of a job, that we have value, and if we don't, you know, we don't. So with, you know, existence of artificial technology and artificial intelligence, this work would be pretty much, a lot of us would be useless in the very near future. We will be very useless. People that they could be useful, as Dr. Yuval Harari points it out in his work, that we will be, a lot of people, they would be useless in this new economy. A lot of, you know, things that we are preparing our students for, not necessarily they exist in 2-3 years. And my heart goes out to them with all kinds of loans, student loans and everything else that they get, but nevertheless, I don't know if what we are training them for in 2 or 3 years, that would be the one that would get them the job that they're supposed, their values are supposed to be according to that. So we are conditioned that, you know, only our jobs matters, not our inner transformation, not the state of our being matters. All the accounting jobs, majority of them would going to go away. Nobody can compare in terms of technology. You know, the attorneys, many of their jobs are already have gone away, or is in the fringe of being taken away. No human being can do better research about any case than the computer system can do without any errors whatsoever, and points out that, well, this is the one that you should be doing, this is the path you should be taking, this is the argument that you should be doing, because it's already can kind of go over everything and figure that out. So a lot of jobs are going to be obsolete. And so what is the value for people who are going to be, today maybe we're useful, and tomorrow very much we are going to be useless. A lot of that technology also would create a lot of discontent. And that's what we see here today, a lot of discontent with people as the jobs would go away, or they would not exist the way we expected in the past. And hence, this kind of a divide that we have between the haves and have-nots, those who can or cannot. The sense of shame for people who have left behind, that has become also a source of too radical to the left or too radical to the right, and there's a nastiness at the edge of both ideologies. So technology has created this divide that we are feeling ideologically, sociologically, economically, and so there's going to be further and further, and we have been divided that way. So our ideologies around that, this feeling of, you know, shame and vulnerability that has been created by technology. So what would we do? You know, if I understand my conditioning, who do we want to be in dealing with the problems of the 21st century. The questions would be, so what would be our value? If then we don't have our jobs, and our conditioning cannot be even more important that we would change our, to transform this conditioning that gives me this narrative today that only my value is according to that. Yeah, of course, as this morning the conversation was, yeah, of course, the desire to suicide within our teens, our young generation and teens, and all the way to child, yeah, it would be even more if you think that you have no values, and you will not have any values. So what's the cost of that conditioning that we are willing to question, to get over it? If we are really understanding the problem, as Krishnaji always pointed out, well, there's no answer there. There's nothing for us to come up with an answer or a solution or anything like that. Most importantly, we are going to have to understand the problem itself, and what is it that we need to understand to change our conditioning there, because we are extremely conditioned with our technologies there. Maybe we will play that a little bit. So while we are working on that maybe going back to Krishnamurti's there, perhaps he would be giving us, kind of like walking us through a pathway of love. That love is missing factor, there is a lack of affections or warmth in relationship. And because we lack that love and tenderness and that generosity, that mercy in relationship, we escape into mass action, which produces further confusion, further misery. So we kind of got into this, mass action. And I vividly remember reading, watching one of his talks that he said, they are creating this technology and they don't care what would that do to us. That like they're creating it and they're moving forward with it and they don't care what would that mean to us. So perhaps if we, so we got into these mass actions of technology, thinking that, our problem would be resolved by this, and that kind of like further created misery for all of us. And if we can really understand the problem, the answer will come out of it, because the answer is not separate from the problem. The answer is actually in the question. And that's kind of like, one of the things that's very difficult to kind of like, talk to our young generation. They want the answer. I'm like, no, change your questions, please. Kind of like, dig in more into it and have a question that, just look at the problem itself. There is no answer to that until I actually understand the problem itself, or and maybe the question that you have maybe is not from the place that you want to ask that question. So keep questioning until you find the question that actually reveals itself to you. So I wanted to kind of like maybe go a little bit into the impact of how does artificial intelligence and how does technology actually frames our conditioning. So if you wouldn't mind. Yeah.
Going back to Minority Report, what is known as predictive policing, as I said, algorithms that determine crimes before they actually happen. But it's not just limited to crime. This is how we give out bank loans. This is actually how we hire public school teachers. This is how we scout sporting teams and talent. It's all over the place. And that really begs the question, can we predict everything? And underneath it, the question is, can we control everything? Google certainly thinks so. Right? This is Ray Kurzweil, who's the engineering director at Google. And he says, look, our company is going to be able to know you better than your spouse. And this is an exact quote. He says, Google will know the answer to your question before you have asked it. Right? It will have read every email you've written, every document, every idle thought you've tapped into a search engine box. It will know you better than even your intimate partner, better perhaps than even yourself. Something to hold. Right? And the formula that is used for, and this is not just Google, this is all the tech industries, right? This is sort of the narrative in which we are embedding our technology solutions of the day. And so the formula that is being used for this is you take a lot of computing power, and we have lots of it. Moore's law has predicted accurately for decades how computing power continues to increase. They say that they predict that in 15 years, it's probably going to be sooner than 15, it might even be 10, that in 15 years, one chip is going to be able to do more transactions than the brains of all human beings put together. Massive computing power. I mean, stuff that used to take entire rooms is now all in our pockets just in a few decades. And if that continues to go exponentially, you can imagine that we would have that world. So what do you do with that computing power? You add to it data, big data. Right? We're constantly extracting all kinds of patterns, all kinds of data from us. Your cellular provider, in ways that we may not even expect it. Your cellular provider, for example, may actually know whether you rushed to get here or whether you're driving slow. You didn't necessarily give them that information, but based on how fast your phone traveled, it kind of knows. And that sounds benign singularly, but when you add all this stuff up, it adds up to a lot of interesting kinds of intelligence. But that alone is not enough. Data alone is not enough. What you need to add to it are algorithms. Algorithms are a set of instructions that pick up certain patterns in data that make the data intelligent. Right? Algorithms are everywhere. If you took Uber here, that's a set of, all your apps are a set of algorithms. If you use GPS, that's a bunch of algorithms. If you cross this traffic light, that's a bunch of algorithms. Everything around us is embedded in these algorithms, and now they have these algorithms which are self-learning, which means they teach themselves. And a lot of machine learning and deep learning of today, what is more commonly known as artificial intelligence, is baked in this. And artificial intelligence, you say, well, what all can it do? So far, it's been pretty impressive, right? It's won at chess and AlphaGo, but it's also better than human beings at playing poker. It's also better at reading lips. So you say, okay, well, that's great. It can read tattoos better than human beings. Fantastic. But it can also accurately, more accurately, detect heart attacks in human beings than doctors can. So algorithms have a very interesting place in our world. In fact, the Google CEO said, we used to be a mobile-first company. Now we are an AI-first company. Right? AI has a lot of power. So what you end up with when you put computing power with big data, with algorithms, sophisticated algorithms, is you get control. And you can use that control in many ways. We're certainly using it. There's an argument to be made that algorithms save lives. And they do. There's no point in denying that. Right? A human being, if a bunch of us have to actually make 2 million prescriptions, we'll make 20,000 errors. Algorithms make 0 errors. So you say, okay, fantastic. You can go down the list and you can make a pretty strong case that algorithms do actually save some lives. But they also have some downsides. Right? This is actually Peter Domingos. He says, if every algorithm suddenly stopped working, it would be the end of the world as we know it. We can't get away from it. Not only are they powerful, they help in some ways, they have some challenges, which I'll get into, but they are everywhere. Right? They are embedded into the fabric of our daily lives. So we owe it to ourselves to really explore the effect of algorithms. one of his biggest weaknesses is it's largely opaque. Who debates algorithms? Who says, well, that's not how it should have been? It's usually this dark black box that we don't know about. And these black boxes are more or less controlled by corporations whose primary interest is to maximize profit, which means is to turn its users into consumers. And that can be problematic. It also perpetuates a lot of bias, implicit biases that were already there. Creates these filter bubbles. In the US, certainly, we have this whole fake news phenomena that's happening, and that's in large part because of these filter bubbles. And it strips us of a lot of creativity, of a lot of choices, and really serendipity. Because if everything is formulaic, where is the serendipity? Cathy O'Neill wrote a book called Weapons of Math Destruction. And in this book, she makes a very compelling case. She says that actually algorithms unfairly, she goes example after example of how algorithms unfairly punish the underprivileged. And we can talk a lot about that, but she actually sums it up perfectly in one sentence, a very short sentence. She says, algorithms simply automate the status quo, things as they are. Now, if you look at the status quo, where are things? This is status quo of inequality. 8 men own more financial wealth than the bottom 3.5 billion people. Right? This is just as of a few months ago. This is another status quo, disconnection. This is everybody taking a selfie with Hillary Clinton when she was running for president. No one is looking at her. Right? And we've created these devices, we've created these solutions, and by itself, you know, we can't make fun of the younger folks because by itself, this is what we've equipped them with. But how have we created this world where you're just an object for pixels for me to grab to put on my Facebook wall, and I don't really even care about looking at you? This is status quo. This is also status quo. If you look at our markets, this is Reid Hoffman, the CEO of LinkedIn. And this is his quote in the Wall Street Journal, and it says, social networks do best when they tap into one of the 7 deadly sins. Facebook is ego, Zynga is sloth, LinkedIn, his own company, is greed. And so here you have a guy who's succeeded at the market economies, and he's saying our organizing principles, he himself is saying that, our organizing principles are the 7 deadly sins. And the question you can hold, the question I think all of us hold, is what about the 7 viral virtues? And if that's not coming out of the market, where is that going to come out? Right. And this is status quo that we have been propagating. And when you propagate this kind of status quo, when you amplify this kind of status quo in the world, it shouldn't be a surprise that we see headlines like this. A beauty contest was judged by AI, artificial intelligence, and the robots didn't really like dark skin. And you say, well, okay, maybe that's just one-off case. This is Joy Buolamwini at MIT. She was using facial recognition software, and this facial recognition software didn't recognize her. Why? Because the people who coded that algorithm didn't actually account for darker skin and the kind of facial structure she had. That doesn't sound right. And you say, whoa, wait a second, that doesn't sound right. So she actually started a whole movement, Coding for Rights, which is now changing that. But it raises a lot of interesting alarms for a lot of things that go under the surface, below the radar for us.
What were some of the things that that occurred to you while listening to that? Possibly, yeah.
Much of it is past tense. If you go to Silicon Valley,
Yes.
there's machine learning and algorithms that are teaching machines, and this is what Elon Musk is cautioning about.
Yes.
The capacity of the tools today that can read your thoughts
Yeah.
with algorithms can project and manage the outcome at a level beyond the human mind.
Yes. That you don't even realize it, but that kind of can tell what you're thinking. Very good. Awesome. Yeah.
A few years ago, someone said something, I forget who, that in the future, because of this generation's propensity to trust in algorithms more than asking people,
Yes.
like who you want to vote for, or why do you want to vote for this person, have a real dialogue. There was a prognostication that our future leaders will be determined by an algorithm, like presidents, prime ministers, parliamentary people, everyone. That if this generation doesn't begin more dialogue, substantively, we risk, creating leaders by algorithms,
By
not just
algorithms.
consumer products.
Maybe it's already happened.
And it already has happened. Who said that? Yeah, that's already, it's already in the works. It's already in the works. Like, probably the previous election in India was impacted by a lot of many other elections have been impacted by it.
Well, no,
Yeah.
no, I mean, it's happening, like the cofactors are, the conditions are there, but what this philosopher, whoever said this, and forgive me, I can't remember who it was, but they were basically saying that people would rather choose, like let an algorithm choose the leader, rather than now we have a manipulation, right, of all the social media. So if, we won't say this person's name, decides to just bypass the press corps and the fourth wall of democracy, we then just have someone who's manipulating social media to their advantage. But what the prognostication is that down the line, if the conditions of the culture just keep people in isolation with their social media, then people will choose to let the algorithm vote for them.
Vote for that.
Does this make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's really what
Yes.
this is terrifying, what you're presenting.
Yeah, so if we are conditioned in such a way also, we continue this not being able to differentiate between what the reality is, and then, between the conditioning of our mind, that actually we should be the one, because that all strips us from creativity. And if we are not creative and our biases and everything else is being formed, so what is that mind that wants to question itself? We have already given our authorities to this, that I have even less possibility, as I have today, to question my mind, to get into that point, to get out of the way and question it. Now I don't even have that anymore, because I'm completely given my authority, all of that to that. So even for that, I'm going to have to ask permission for that authority. Can I enter into my mind, to my brain, to my, everything that is driving my decisions and everything else. So even then, it would be even harder for us to do the job that we are all here to understand about, like how Krishnaji talked about question that mind. Even now, I don't even have that authority anymore, because I have already given it out to somebody else, and I have never experienced or groom my judgment, mind to have a good judgment there. My judgments are only limited to good, bad, right, wrong, should, shouldn't. Those are, those are the only thing. But I don't really have a profound way of questioning things or judging things, because my judgments are extremely limited to that. And even that good, bad, right, wrong, should, shouldn't, that already has been determined for me. Don't like this, like this. No. No. We can, while our brain are still somehow functioning, to use that leverage technology for that. According, I did research about Lincoln, in CEO and what they have said, that, it's like our all of these products, whether it's Google or others, are very much driven by what the conversation was this morning also, that there is this, the deadly scene, I think, that Nippon talked about, but that psychological default that it's there, that it's selfish and it's kind of looking for its own, all of that. So they're all programmed for that side of the brain. But we also do have, if we kind of like shift, be able to make this inner shift, we also have this entity that is working on compassion, intelligence, and all of that. We can use this technology to intensify that or to put that out there. We have that option, but that option is to be a lot more stronger than this one. And we don't see it today. We don't, this is the difficulty of it. And that's why I thought to make it relevant, it's important to make it relevant to work of Krishnamurti, because it's like time is passing by and we are not even having that much possibility that at the time that Krishnamurti was alive and he was talking about, we are not even, we have missed that window of opportunity to question. And so with this little time that we have here, can we start questioning that and starting leveraging that technology? It's here whether we like it or not, and it does do some good work, for betterment. But like quickly bring it into compassion, intelligence, love, and it cannot produce it. It cannot produce it, but we can use it to make all of that more of a mainstream than under. But yeah, for sure, it cannot produce compassion. It cannot produce love. It cannot produce empathy. Those are not the algorithm that the domain of that. Let me take her and then come back to you. I'd love to hear it. Yes.
I took a class for 12 weeks. It was NAMI, National Institute of Mental Health, Family to Family. And you would be just shocked at how much behavior of humans is related to shame.
Yes.
And there's no algorithm for shame. Someone insults you and you are, just blindsided. And so much human behavior, when people are acting pretty rotten, is related to, shame. Like, how dare you cut me off, and then they go road rage you.
Yes.
So how much of our behavior is shame-based, or,
Much of that.
a lot
of that.
A lot
Yeah.
of bad stuff happens in the world because of people getting insulted or shamed, or, they're ashamed.
And then we can go into that a little bit later, but it's kind of like, shame is one of the major, and then this system, as we see it, as this overall system, it kind of makes us very conducive to feel shame very quickly.
Although the kids are always checking their cell phones like every 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm a dental hygienist, I'm in people's mouths, and they're checking their phones.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get in there and work, and I'm like, can you put that down for 3 minutes?
Would you be more from this?
And I'm like, hey, just put that away for 30 seconds or something. They can't put it down.
No, it is a connection, that, addiction that you will have to it. And it's very difficult. Like in 60 Minutes, there was this person, a young man who was like, I created this app that actually every so often would come out and say, well, that's enough, put that aside. Because like, I talked to iPhone, what's the name of it? Apple product, and they said, well, absolutely not. We will not let your your app to be loaded here. No, we do want them to constantly be checking that. We don't want any app that would stop you. Sure, that's isolation. That's isolation, and then things then all those algorithms would work very well with isolation. And what's the inner transformation that we want to move us from isolation to community? We kind of bring us out. That can we use actually technology, not to only come from this side of the psyche, but we do have other ones. Can we leverage that to bring that side of us out? Great, thank you so much. Yeah, you were going to say.
Well, actually, you kind of touched on what I was going to get at, and that is that the whole one of the major premises here is technology is bad, and this is what I'm hearing.
Got it.
I might be mishearing, which is, I guess, why I'm asking, but it seems to me that, for me, a more fundamental question is, why have algorithms and, more broadly, technology turned out to be widely perceived as instruments of evil, for lack of a better word. I mean, when you've mentioned, and this gentleman did Google, and Facebook. Well, you know, the original concept that Mark Zuckerberg had is that, you know, we're going to create this global community.
Yes.
And we talk about technology just creating, you know, bad emotions in people. Well, I mean, it's also true that I can look on my cell phone and see the suffering of someone in Iran or Iraq or Syria. And if that's the case, why don't we view technology as neutral? And I've just given you an example of where technology can greatly enhance empathy. So,
it can, but it's being used by people that have no empathy. its use is by the people that's the biggest thing where it goes wrong. It's a neutral. It can be just a neutral element of life. But it's being used by people that have no empathy, that are greedy. Sure. You know, all the 7 deadly sins. So it's a neutral thing, but then when it's used wrongly, then it becomes, you could look at it's bad, but the fact is it's the people using it in different ways.
I agree. I don't disagree with that. My point, though, is that too often when I've been engaged in conversations like this, we take what you basically as a descriptive statement instead of a normative statement. You're saying, this is the way the world is right now. Technology is being used for bad purposes because a handful of Mark Zuckerbergs and others try to make money, and so they're using technology for that purpose. I agree with you descriptively. I'm speaking more normatively. I'm saying, well, let's think about the way it should be and what its potential is. And I've tried to give an example or two of how, if something had changed, technology could be viewed as a wonderful thing.
Right, but Fran is saying the change actually has to occur in us.
That's kind of like the essence of kind of going into it, connecting you to exactly.
And I think Krishnamurti would say the same.
Yes.
See, I think this is also not an isolated problem. I mean, in a sense, you could say Krishnamurti, if you want to take a really narrow view, is completely irrelevant to this and has nothing to teach us. I don't believe this. But say that because Krishnamurti never had a cell phone, I don't think. He probably never had a computer. He probably would have no idea what an algorithm is. But I think he does have something to add to us. And I think one way to maybe encapsulate this is to say, we shouldn't just look at this narrow sliver of a problem, that this is part of an age-old dilemma of confusing knowledge with wisdom. One could look at this and say, all of this technology that we've been describing is an incredible tool to accumulate knowledge. But I think Krishnamurti or someone like that would be comfortable stepping back and saying, yeah, but we're not applying wisdom, and we're confusing wisdom with knowledge. And I've spoken more than I should, so I'll stop there.
That's fine.
I think all of that. Yes and yes. What we are saying here is that we didn't do the work when it wasn't about algorithm and all of that. We didn't uncondition ourselves or understand what our conditioning is. Therefore, anything that even after that it came to existence, still coming from that side of us. We can now today, because of technology, we can live fulfilled life. You know, if we were a person of disability, any kind of disability. Like I see it in my classroom that how much technology, you know, a student that probably 10 years ago wouldn't be able to survive in that classroom is able to survive in the classroom and thrive because of technology. So because now they can read it, they can even, with the blindness, they can kind of feel it, even if they're not hearing it. All of that is amazing. Students that they would not be actually part of the mainstream education, now they are in the mainstream education. You know, overcome anything, thriving actually, of all of that. So it's not that technology is bad or anything. It is the minds that have been conditioned and the direction that after we are like left with such a gap between our rich and poor, and such a gap, like, of people owning that much that they are kind of like, dictating how the world should be. That's technology in the hands of that, then it manipulates who we are today. And I think Krishnamurti's work would be as relevant today, saying that, look at your conditioning. Look at how you're being conditioned. Find out your conditioning. Break through that conditioning. And that's probably even more difficult job as it was that day, as like you said, because he didn't have those things. But it would probably, still it is relevant to say, look at your conditioning. Look at what is conditioning you. Look at your consumptions. Look at your consumptions from food to, look at your waste. Look at all of that. Look at all of these things. You're conditioned to think that, okay, one more of this doesn't matter, does it? One more toss out, that doesn't matter, yeah? One more shirt out of this, it doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt anybody, yeah.
Go back in time, and Krishnamurti was talking about concern about 50 years of teaching and there's no change. This was in the 80s.
Yes.
And at that time, the rate of change exceeded the rate of change of the Industrial Revolution 300 times. Then he saw these kids dropping out from the norm, not going through the school, and going into developing toys that became the technologies that drive our whole enterprise. Now the question is, in Silicon Valley, I meet some of these kids in their 20s and 30s, worth $100 million, walking around in jeans and shirts, living in a one room. They don't relate to the money. They relate to the experience of creating. So you look at the stuff that's moving forward, it's algorithms and all the other areas. We have a choice. I ask my friends, you don't like pollution? Do you have a bicycle?
Yeah.
You don't like technology? Why are you using a cell phone? Because already, like Kurzweil said, 500 bits of information, more than you know of yourself, is already out there. And now we have AIs, that what you call web crawlers, that pick up all the stuff and are creating a journey for people independent of the social media intrusive behavior. So we have a choice. And the choice is stepping out rather than being consumed by the desire to use all this to advantage.
Earlier, if I may use your question.
I think earlier, this gentleman asked me that, please address it. Like, as someone who is using technology and I'm kind of, in the technology field, like, how the question that I'm holding here is that, like, would we be able to use this to work our conditioning through? And I think it would be possible if we pay attention to it. It would be possible to create a different world with it. But then again, that we wouldn't create that world if that inner transformation hasn't happened yet. We wouldn't create that. All of that is possible. We wouldn't be doing that if that inner transformation hasn't happened yet. People today, they all like to go to, it was pointed out in one of the talks one time, people, they like to go to space now. Like, with all the problems that we have now, the kind of money that everyone is kind of like saving, $250,000, like, $1 million, like, to save their place to get to these places. And when you smell, they say the smell of the space and out there is like a burned metal. And why is it that, we have all these beautiful fragrances here and we want to kind of dump this and go and experience that? What is it in our conditioning that feels like there's always something better somewhere else, where all these things is here to actually use them for wisdom? But we are always thinking that the answer is somewhere else. If there was something else, somewhere else, something more, that would make a difference. So kind of like looking at that conditioning, that dumps this with all the great fragrance of it, and it is pursuing that to go there and smell burnt metal. So kind of like, we have to kind of get into this mindset to understand what is in our conditioning that always think something better is somewhere else than what I have, and I can kind of cultivate that. So I think for me is that I can use this only when I have an inner transformation. Until like I get off of the mindset that is driven by the deadly sins. And until then, whatever we use, it will have some use, but it would definitely also will be always creating something deadly with it as well. And until we kind of have that inner transformation in it, that we will be able to utilize this as opposed to be used by it. So looking at what Krishnaji would say is that, can the brain itself, which has been programmed conditions, ever ask that question? Or one really watches very diligently, acutely, how the brain works in our daily life, how it reacts, how quickly its responses are according to its background, according to its knowledge, according to its tradition. And watching these responses, one discovers how conditioned those responses are. Like if you're really watching it, we would say, yeah, we keep producing with everything that we have, we keep producing according to something that we already know. Like, when I sat down and kind of, I wanted to create piece of studies, I thought, well, or even when I was asked to come and talk about things, I was like, okay, I'm looking at all the dialogues, and I'm like, should I be kind of creating that the same way that others? And then kind of quickly I was like, well, no. I don't think they had asked me to come in and create something that Mark Lee so beautifully always creates, or Mr. Michael Mendoza, Professor Krishna. Maybe they expect something different from me, and so why should I kind of only come from a space that I know and create it that way? Maybe I would kind of come from a new space and from a new understanding, and then go back, from sometimes the talk is from Krishnaji and out. Maybe I would go from out to back to Krishnaji, kind of like, from what it is in reality of life, what it is, and then kind of go back to the talks of Krishnaji and kind of like make that connection. So we are always looking to create, the brain always is looking to compare things to what it knows, and if it knows, it feels safe and secure and will continue. So what does it take for us to create things that we are absolutely scared about and not sure that if it's going to work or not? In that, there is a creativity. In that, there is something new. In that, we are questioning the conditioning. In that, there's a transformation of our conditioning according to what it always has been and what it will always be, the status quo. Going back to that, we have to watch not only the content of the brain, but all the context of our narratives. One must have this time to see what is actually happening, not what you wish or desire to happen, but what is actually in our daily life is going on. And that watchfulness makes the brain extraordinarily acute, sharp, clear. And this clarity is really, if we can go into this very, very deeply, is total freedom. He's inviting us to look at our freedom, not because we have a choice to get this or that, because we have this talk to attend to or that talk to attend. It's not because we have these kind of choices to do. That's not the essence of freedom. Freedom, he always talks about, it has to happen from the beginning. Not, it's just you freely are thinking about these things. You freely are questioning the conditioning of the mind. It's not because it's a good idea or because I have I can be this and that. It's just has nothing to do with it. It has to be with that state of mind that freely, with all its inquisitiveness, with all its interest, is looking at the content of the mind, the content of the brain, and it's kind of like, is able to see it, and seeing it, most of the time we don't have to do anything about it. If we see it, it's clear, it's gone. There's nothing we have to do about it. It's just like, when I talk to students about conflict, they say, well, we have this solution and that solution. Sometimes if you just listen, just like that, if you just listen, conflict is gone. Because most of the time, people, they want somebody to listen. And if they see it that you're listening, they're willing to give it up. They're willing to let it go. They're willing, but without that listening, that conflict would, with all kinds of sophisticated solutions for years and years, continues, and nothing changes. So maybe if we only and only very freely look at the content of our brain, looking at the content of the conflicts, looking at the conditioning of our brain, in that deep, acute, honest, sincere listening, watching, that would reveal itself to us. And that's something that algorithm wouldn't be able to do. That's something that emergence of that is something that algorithm would not be able to do. That algorithm would only be able to predict, but it will not be able to do what your brain or what that watching would do automatically. That one always has an end result. This one, you don't know about the end result. It just appears, it reveals itself to you. So we need to be able to be vulnerable, sharp enough, deep enough, caring enough, just to kind of watch that and let that emerge. Emergence of that is not as a forced result, but it is because we allow it to happen. We allow it to emerge in that. And that is something that no technology can do other the inner technology of a human being.
And so,
Yes.
in conflict resolution,
Yes.
is this more at the forefront of conflict resolution in terms of when you have parties that are in dispute?
Yes.
This idea of allowing them to take the leadership or the expression of what the resolution should be, as opposed to sort of mediation suggestion from the outside.
So the biggest part of a conflict resolution is that if people, they take themselves out of the conflict resolution and put the problem in the middle, that they won't be embodying the problem. They would put that in the middle and let, we are all going to be working on this thing that is in the middle. Not that, it's me versus you. Anytime in the conflict resolution, we are capable of stepping aside and then say that it's you versus me, and transform that language and say it's you and I, one entity, you and I versus the problem, that we both have the problem. There is a problem, and you and I, we are working on it to resolve it. And until then, probably any good solution that comes in, it requires a lot of energy to sustain it. You have to police it, you have to put policies towards it, you need to have law enforcement in it, you have to somehow manipulate it to happen. But when the statement changes to you and I versus the problem, you and I will be monitoring it. You and I will sustain it. You and I will be constantly in communication with each other. But until it's you versus me, we are giving and taking and giving and taking and negotiating and all of that, we will be kind of like still there is not relational. There's still no relationship there. But with the change of statement to you and I, then we are related. We are related. And then with that mind to look at the problem, then we have a very, very good shot at that, because then we are listening. And by listening, 75% of the problem is gone if we have a very good listening. If the listening is not about, I'll be quiet until it will be my turn to say something. Or I'm kind of like, planning on what to say next. Or I'm like, when people, they see you completely in their world, you're looking at their world, you're getting their world, you're getting their pain, you're getting their everything over here, you're getting it. Usually they're pretty much ready to either to resolve the problem or just kind of like say, that's fine. Yeah, I'm fine with this. Usually 75% is gone by a good listening. Yeah.
If for example, people in Congress did that.
Yeah.
They got together and say, us, we have this problem.
Yeah.
Not my side has this argument, your side has that.
Yeah.
It'd be a whole different story.
It would be a very different story, no? It would be different. You kind of sometimes
See a glimpse of it happening, it's just like, a glimpse of that happens, and you're like, oh wow, couldn't you repeat that? could you just do that again? And yeah, totally. Like even like a very part of the conversation actually at the end of this, in the same video that Nipun was doing, had a part that this guy who had killed like a serial killer who had killed a lot of people. And one by one, people, they came in and they showed their disguise about this. It was just, and he showed no remorse. Until like one person kind of like looked at him and kind of like showed empathy, and he just kind of started crying. And so in our conflict resolution that I do with the students, I kind of going out there, see a lot of that. There's no budging until somebody like really listens to them and really gets their world. When you get people's world, there's something magical happens there, and which technology cannot produce that emotion, cannot produce that transformation of the heart, which is kind of like it has to grow from a human being towards another human being. Yeah, totally. Yeah, we get a glimpse of that and we're like, could you guys do it again? That would be nice. That was nice, actually. And this is a quote that I promised one of my students who actually put this together, and it was really taken by this quote from Krishnamurti, that we do not know what love is. We know the symptoms of it, the pleasure, the pain, the fear, the anxiety, and so on. We try to solve the symptoms, which becomes a wandering in darkness. We spend our days and nights in this, and it is soon over in death. That is just like, we only know love from the absence of it or the symptoms of it, just like we know peace through the absence of it. We kind of like, the lack of it. And to make that switch, and we kind of like, keep dealing with the symptoms of the lack of it. And soon it's over in death, and nobody, as Krishna, a few times I was kind of mentioned, nobody would ever know. Like, all of this dies with us, with me, and nobody would ever know all those meanings, all those interpretations, all those things that I made about life. Nobody would ever know about all those things. I would just take it with me. So nobody would ever know about these identities that we have created inside, about the pain, about the pleasure, or about, all these are something that it's kind of like, over here and just, soon it's over. So why don't we actually focus on love and compassion and intelligence with our education, and educate ourselves every day with that. And having that in mind, probably we will be able to create a good technology, a technology that serves all of us, would give access to people that normally would not have access to those things. It can actually be very useful, but we need to change. We need to be aware of our conditioning and not be taken by it. We need to be the master and not the algorithm. And I think with that, I want to kind of conclude my thoughts about it, but I would like to have more conversation about it, that I think a transformation inside of transformation of our conditioning is one of the most difficult things that we would do in our lifetime, but nevertheless, the only thing that matters. Anything other than that, our jobs, our status, our so-called knowledge, none of that matters, because we are going to take them to death with us. But nevertheless, that inside transformation would be necessary to create a different world with it. So I want to ask you, see if you have questions or things that we want to kind of continue on with this conversation. I don't know if you were satisfied with the original question that you had in mind.
Yeah, I would like to spread these teachings more to people and help them have the realization of this. So any thoughts or practical examples of how to do that would be my kind of overarching question.
Great. So how can we break this
Practice more in depth to everybody? That's the question. And I would like to also open it up to you, and I can answer that as well, or respond to that as well. Yeah.
Through the evolution, through technology, fire was technology, but stories, and we have one big story. Our stories are conditioning.
Yeah.
So the freedom from the known is detaching from that. And we have a choice. Technology does not determine the outcome. We choose technology. So if you're going to move into empathy, detach from that space, go to the place of freedom from the known, and stay in that space, and then get into your car and drive. So it's not about empathy driving us. We are choosing the toolkit and the desire to be separate if we choose. So, I always have this conversation with people saying, why are you so intimidated by everything that we are choosing to improve the life conditions and reach the global environment, to influence them in ways that are meaningful? And if you go to these rural environments, you have a beautiful, when people travel, whether during Russia or wherever, beautiful people detached from the underpinnings of the toolkit that drives the big communities in the cities. So we have a choice.
You have a choice there, and also, I'll come to you. And also, I would say that probably you want empathy. We have to be at a place that empathy chooses us, or compassion chooses us. And I can go more into it with you. If you're kind of have an empty
mind there, then compassion would choose us, that it would come through me. And so it wouldn't be so much, again, us driving it. It would be compassion itself is the driving force. But it's going to happen through my life, through our lives. So allowing the conditioning to go away, and all there is to it is just an empty vessel that these things go through. Professor Krishna had an encounter with Krishnamurti saying that, Sarah, do you always have these plans, like 3 months here, 3 months in Switzerland, 3 months in England and in India, and all these plans are ahead of time, all these schedules are there ahead of time. Was there any time that the time came and you felt like, I want to be doing this, or I don't feel like it? And he said, sure, if time comes, if I don't want to do it, I won't do it. But it has never happened. This has never happened. Like, just like when you're kind of like, you are the vessel of that. It's not like I feel like it, or I don't feel like it, or I want it, or I don't want it. It's just like it's coming through. It's coming through. So the lesser of a conditioning, the clearer of a space for things to happen. And so that probably would be our biggest challenge there. Yeah.
Like you said, how do we engage in spreading this kind of teaching? So I was wondering if there is a support structure for having a live conversation like this in different cities or different towns. Is there way to support this kind of work?
I think there are great dialogues. I think it happens all the time here. They have done a very good job of digitalizing everything, again, using technology, digitalizing everything. I think holding dialogues, whether coming here and kind of, or, I had it like for 3-4 years, and really helped me to get deeper with that. I mean, the best way to learn anything is by teaching it. So, I mean, I felt like, if it is in our house, and, I better have like a better understanding of things, and so I was kind of like viewing everything myself, and questioning and things like that. So I think, holding dialogues in different places, like those are like easy things to do, to get the information out or to get the teachings. You hold the space for it. You hold the space in wherever you are, in a library, if not your home, in a library. All community colleges, for their community, they have, they offer space, or a library, the local libraries, and hold the space there for people to come and inquire into it. I think, if it's close by here, definitely use this, Pepper Tree, or, but if not, in your own local communities, create that. And also create a lot of, positive things that people, they can kind of pay it forward, or kind of forward this way of thinking, kind of like, reaching out to that side of us that has compassion, kind of like, generating activities that, it talks to compassionate side of us. It's very helpful. But the teaching itself, I think they have done a very good job of rearranging the books, make it more relevant, and with all aspects of it to today's world, and then digitalizing everything on YouTube. Yeah.
Another thing probably would be helpful is if the center has a leadership training or something that can, leaders can be trained in how to organize events, because I know Krishnamurti says the pathless land. I don't run any organization, so it's against his teaching. I understand.
Yeah.
You also have to be practical. In cities and towns, different cities, people come. It's not easy to just hold a conversation and, we are so stuck with our life and anxiety and tension.
Sure.
But we have some leaders trained here, and they can go there and set up a structure so that people can meet for a coffee, 10 people, 15 people in the town, and, some support structure will be helpful.
Yeah, for people to
Take responsibility and do this. I think, again, some of the things that I work with the students is about responsibility. Take responsibility. If there's nothing else, no, you take it. You take it, and you make yourself leader in that, and then manage it there. I saw a hand there.
The conversation has been, I think the awareness, of course, of our own use of technology. It's so easy to become very unconscious and get into this, really into this world of communication that almost becomes meaningless in a way, unless it's really a vital communication that you need to tell somebody something. But it is this habitual, like sending text over and over and over, things that is not even needed to be said. But I think that, so that awareness, personal responsibility, I think what you said in the beginning comes to mind that I think I find it important to bring back up. To really shift our paradigm from a consumer to a provider or something. So everything is what can I bring in to replace some of this unconscious reliance on technology that is really separating us.
Yeah, how can we become a contributor?
Yeah, instead of us always consuming it, how can we contribute to that, to our communities? That could be a good place to go. In the context of, again, changing our conditioning, is to change our conditioning from thinking that if I consume, it's better for me, and it's kind of like seeing consumption as a natural way, rather than actually seeing my contribution as a natural way of being for me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then we are intensifying the same narrative. Yeah, yeah, very good. Awesome. Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for being part of the dialogue, part of this conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm here if you have questions, and I'll be happy to talk to.